Welcome to What the Hex, your source for Warhammer Underworlds in under 30 gambits that need your leader on the board. Today I am your host, Phil, and with me as always, trusty co-host Davy. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing a lot better now.
Yeah, you had a quick fight with Nurgle and the Rona.
Yeah, it didn't feel quick while it was happening, but it was quick. Yeah, it was a family vacation that was to celebrate the in-laws' 50th, and I was telling people it's basically like if you I don't know how many people are familiar with Mad Libs. It's like here's a story, fill in the blanks. Sometimes human respect. We did I got Corona Mad Lib, because it's like
Yeah, right.
totally unsurprising. Is just the details of exactly how it went down. Anyway, so
Yeah,
yep, but doing all right now.
good. Glad to hear you're feeling better.
Yep.
Just in time to dive back in for yet another new warband. We knew that the Gorechosen were coming because they previewed one of the fighters a few weeks before. Man, how long ago was that now? I want to say it was a few weeks before Hexbane's release, even.
Yeah, I think we may have seen him in passing then.
Yeah,
While we're recording our last couple of episodes, so before they
yeah,
were on pre-order at the very
yeah.
least.
So coming much earlier than expected, which is nice.
Yeah,
But lots of new information.
it's really the
Um,
underworld's way lately, right? Like we feel
yeah,
like get we got that huge glut. We got Nether Maze and the Exiled Dead both at the same time, and then uh heck, did we also get Illusion? Well, whatever. We get
yeah,
uh we get a whole bunch of content, and then months and months go by with nothing, and then boom, boom, like back to back war bands drop,
yeah, yeah. So
and another rivals deck. So
yeah,
there's
yeah. I mean, I guess we're not gonna have like an episode probably about the Deadly Depths. But they will be dropping at the same time. So it is probably worth plugging here that we will be doing again a card by card review. It seemed to work pretty well last time on the blog, so we're going to try for that again.
yeah.
So if you want the card by card reviews, you can head on over there. For today, though, we are going to do a live deck build for these new Gorechosen guys. But before we get too far into that, I guess a quick little bit of context first, so you know when we're recording. This is September 3rd. This is going to be a week before the pre-order is when we're recording.
Mm.
Folks probably just saw information from Nova about their tournament, which is cool that that's going on as well.
Hmm. Yeah. That is a good call out. I guess we could do some community shout outs.
Sure.
Nova went down. I didn't realize. I guess I thought there would be some a bigger field there. But it's
Yeah.
we gotta attend them to build them back up, and so I'm glad some people did. And I think we need a special shout out to Gerard for first place, bringing the troll out of semi-retirement.
Old
uh,
Molly G. Don't call it a
yeah,
comeback.
our buddy Jimmy is best painted, and Jason Murray got best opponent. Which I talked to him. He was real tickled, pleased about that. So
Nice.
that was cool. There was no Hexbanes there, which gosh, shameful display, everybody. No,
Yeah.
that's people took what they're going to take. It looked a little brawly. I wasn't nearly as much of the hold stuff as I would have expected. I saw a couple Rippas, couple Crushes, Mollog, Mad Mob.
Yeah.
Jimmy had Sepulchral Guard, which were one of the standouts there as far as that goes. But I don't know how much you can read into a small field and the meta, but Gerard certainly made a choice based on what he thought it was going to be there. Brought Mollog and paid
Yeah.
off. So
Yeah. I I mean, I haven't seen anyone play Mollog in quite a while, but in theory, he
Mhm.
should be in a pretty good spot right now. So it's maybe some proof here.
Yeah.
And while it is a small field, it is a field of people who play frequently and a large number of folks from the vassal communities. So
Yep.
um,
Definitely.
definitely not large, but probably a good representative sample of high quality play.
Sure.
Uh, yeah, so that was pretty cool. I know it was planned to be a 2 day, so hopefully they do something today as well. Um,
I from what I hear is it's just going to be kind of a pickup. I think a lot of the players who were in this
mm,
event, that event, were also playing in other systems. So
oh, okay.
I think they'll have an informal thing going
Just
on.
a few
Yeah.
play for funds kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Any other things you want to shout out from the community?
Um, there was oh yeah, set the tempo. Been a little quiet for a while, but came back with a sort of meta analysis. Uh, I guess by the time you're hearing this, there's a whole new set of cards and
Yeah,
warband to
yeah,
maybe shake things up. But it's always a good read, and I just encourage you to kind of keep your eyes out for new content there, because I think I woke up one morning, saw I had a notification that he had something new. I was like, this is exactly what I need to kind of wake
yeah.
myself up, is read about underworlds. So
Always
um,
good.
yeah. And then actually I wanted to say thanks. We had to really kind of scramble because of travel, mostly on my part, to get our last couple episodes made, and we continue to get I don't know why I'm still surprised, but we continue to get a surprising amount of good feedback on the audio battle reports and the deck builds. I think people are just enjoying that different take on it, and thanks for letting us know. It means a lot to hear
Yeah.
from listeners. So um, had had a bunch of Discord interactions, and then a nice email in the inbox this morning when we woke up right before we recorded was pretty cool. So. Um, I to be honest, it was a Michael T is the one who sent something. He uh, entertainingly, the subject line was "not guilty," and when I saw that notification when I woke up, I was like, "Oh, spam!" Like
Good
I
thing
thought it
you
was
read
going
it.
to be some political thing, and then I was like, "Oh no, wait! This actually looks like they're talking about." Oh, cool. So yeah, appreciate that. I'll bop them a reply when we're done here. But good stuff.
Very good.
Um, yeah, I think we were hoping to do in the same order a bat rep and then deck breakdown, but my bout with COVID meant that our options were a little more limited. So
Yeah.
we're gonna try it in the different order here, which maybe you like more. If you like it in this order, if it doesn't matter, whatever you can.
Yeah. You can let
We're
us know.
always, yeah, exactly.
uh I have a guess, but have has anything been going on with you for hobbying?
So no, the I was looking forward to getting back, and I was like, I could do a little bit of hobby, and obviously that got blown up. I have been discussing a bunch of underworlds just because we've got our WTC team together. Which by
Yeah.
the time you hear this, there's a couple of days to get a team together. I think we dropped this episode about 3 days before the
Yep.
deadline. So if you're listening to this very close to the release, you can get motivated, get something together. I think last I checked, there were about 5 teams. Looked like Poland, Russia, Italy, us, and a grab bag vassal team. Um,
Hmm.
so
No
uh,
UK team. That's
no, well,
surprising.
uh, the Steel City is MIA. They were the ones that I attached to last year, and I think half of Team UK was not from the UK last year. So,
Well,
but yeah, you would think if there's one place that
mm,
the game is doing particularly well, it's
yeah.
where they can have big old monthly Bugman's clashes.
And yeah, well, and I feel like there's a lot of vassal folks from the UK area, but I don't know.
Sure.
Uh, but yeah, and I guess it probably goes without saying, but I'm on that team and have been prepping for that as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing too surprising there. Uh, should be fun. I have no idea how we're gonna do. I feel like the competition level will be very high, but um, it'll be fun either way.
It'll be good. It's a thing that we've touched on before in the past is, there can be a tendency. It's a fun thing about a game that despite the prevalence of the internet and the ability to kind of cross pollinate across different metas or local play groups or whatever, there is still a tendency for play groups to develop their own tendencies and that sort of thing. So, like if nobody's running real hard swarm hold objective, then nobody's teching against it or something like that.
Yeah,
So it'll be nice for a lot of our players to kind of take a peek outside our own local play styles and see what else is out there.
sure. Yeah, be good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can dive in to start building this deck, unless you've got anything else.
No, I think the only caveat I'm going to throw out here is, and I guess this is a little peek behind the curtains. We of course thank GW for providing review copies so that we
Of
can
course.
do this sort of thing ahead of time, have this content ready for you on the day of release. But one thing we don't know is we don't know anything about the FAR list.
Correct.
We don't have input. We don't any more than anybody else does. And we don't have any clue as to when it's coming. So with any of the stuff that we're making in advance, if we make it and discover that on the day of release it's got 5 or 6 restricted in it or something, then we're going to cover a bunch of different options and kind of refine it down. But you may need a couple of tweaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Shouldn't be too bad.
yeah. And I think the hope is that we then will maybe bat rep with the list that we build here today. And so if we have to make some tweaks to do that, then we will.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So we've got Drom's Gorechosen. I don't know about you, but when we saw the remainder of the warband revealed, I was rather surprised that it was a 3-fighter warband. Is I guess I just assumed that we were probably getting some sort of a reworking of Magor's Fiends, and they would be 4 fighters, or like maybe there'd be 3, but it would have some sort of gimmick for like some sort of 4th thing. Since there's a slaughter priest, there might have been like a demon or something you could summon, sort of a la eyes or whatever. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Feels a little bit more like crushes almost, but
Right.
chaos crushes. So
Right. I'm glad you said crushes because I was about to embarrass myself. I was going to say that the last non-Stormcast 3-fighter warband that we had seen, I was gonna throw out Wormspat, but crushes was obviously the correct answer.
yes.
Unless there's something else I'm forgetting. But
Did Wormspat come out after the Rippas?
they did. Yeah.
Okay.
It was
Yep.
Grimwatch, Rippas, and Wormspat and Hrothcorn were.
Got it. Yep. That was a while ago now. But yes, so crushes, and they look kind of like maybe they fit in the same vein, but I guess we can run down the fighters and then you folks can decide for yourselves. So normally I think I would say we should start with the leader, but there's kind of a lot going on with him.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking maybe we save him for last.
That works for me. Who do you want to cover first then?
Yeah. So I think maybe we can just start with the first guy who was revealed and do
Sure.
Skull Grinder Herax.
Yeah.
So this guy's pretty, I guess I'd say pretty average. I don't know. He's got like no keywords. He's just corn. He's speed 4, 1 block, 4 wounds. So everything pretty standard there. And his attack is range 1, 2 smash, 2 damage with blood chains keyword and stagger. Stagger seems pretty nice here, but Blood Chains is a special ability. So he can remove a blood tithe when he's making the attack. I think it's pretty, you kind of have to assume some things here, but I think it's implied that when you make the attack, you can choose to remove a blood tithe counter and make it range 2. Um, but the wording for the ability is literally remove one blood tithe counter from this card, range 2 until resolved.
Mm.
So there's not actually anything that specifies a trigger for this. So we might need some clarification, or people can just, you know, rather than our rather than go raw, they can try and use
Yeah,
the rules as intended here.
I'm not super interested in like debating. I
No, me
understand why
neither.
people are having that. I think the one thing I was wondering, I think there's a few things. I don't know. I wonder if there's effects that can pop up, like reactions that only affect like range 1, and then you can on the fly turn this into a range 2 or something. Like I'm trying to think about, because it doesn't have a timing either,
Yeah,
so it's
maybe.
a little sloppy.
It's yeah. It's gonna need. There's gonna be some weird interactions probably, but on the whole, I don't think it's really all that complicated. He can just
Right.
choose to pull a token and uh, get an extra range, which 2 smash 2 damage is pretty nice.
Yeah. What token is that though, Phil?
A blood tithe token.
Yeah.
Well, conveniently, it's right on his card. So blood tithe is their shared mechanic across the whole warband. So this will be fairly important for all the fighters. Um, So after setup, you give a blood tithe to each of them. So they'll all start with 1. And then after an activation step in which this fighter dealt damage or was dealt damage, and that after an activation step is pretty important because it does
Hmm.
have to happen during an activation.
Hmm.
Um, so then any damage other than lethal hex, you give the fighter a blood tithe counter. Um, and this does also tie into their inspire mechanic, which is also universal. And it is when they have 3 or more blood tithe counters, they inspire.
Hmm. I think a couple words in there that are also important, like you mentioned, after an activation step, which I think it's easy for people to overlook and think after an action. This will be after the whole activation. So if you put Mighty
Mm-hmm.
Swing on somebody and they went in and hit 3 different ghouls or something like that,
Yeah.
it's still only going to be the one blood tithe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess reactions would still happen before the activation is over. So if you had some sort of reaction that put a damage, no, because it has to be this fighter dealt the damage. But I guess if you dealt damage to your fighter with a reaction, I don't know. Like there's some weird stuff you could try and do, but I don't know that it's worth trying to slot stuff in there. Most of the time, it will be you dealt damage with an attack or were dealt damage by an attack.
Hmm. Or was dealt damage other than by lethal. So I think there's
Uh,
a few things like you could run into somebody's blood rack mask bubble or something like that.
yes,
Not technically lethal,
but
um,
it
and then
does
it gets you
deal one
damage. So
damage.
it is a rule that you're just going to have to. 95% of the time you will know what it does, and then 5% of the time you're gonna have to double check the wording and be like, does this actually
Yeah,
count right
yeah.
now? So
Uh, I guess what do you think of that?
the blood tithe.
Yeah.
It's a good question. So they start. You only need 2 to get. So I think every once in a while you'll just inspire real easily
Mm-hmm.
if you start with 1. If somebody attacks you, hits you, and then you attack him back, and then you're inspired. But other times you're going to be pressured to spend some of that. I would expect it's a rare game where all these guys will be inspired.
I
Um,
would agree.
and I think it feels a little along the lines of Dread Pageant, where they don't count on the Inspire. Sometimes it happens for them, and it's great when
Mm-hmm.
it does, because Vasilak gets cleave and goes to 3 damage or whatever. But I think a lot of times they plan on operating uh, not counting on getting the Inspire. And I think different members of this warband want it more than others. Skull Grinder, the only thing he gets is an extra point of damage on that attack.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like bad by any means to get +1 damage when you're inspired, but
Yeah.
you probably don't chase it, right? I mean, it's like if it happens, and that's great. But I'm not
Hmm.
going to go out of my way to make sure that it happens.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, he's pretty basic. I don't think there's really anything else to say there, and we got all the sort of universal mechanics out of the way.
Yeah. He's I think he's an important, as we'll see, he's the fastest starting speed of anyone on the warband.
Yeah, yeah,
Add that to the fact that he can optionally get himself to range 2. He's got the longest starting threat range, um,
yeah. He maybe gets the
including all
ball rolling for you.
modifiers. Exactly, and that stagger makes him it makes him a potential candidate for an early accuracy boost to hit somebody, stagger them, and then set up the rest of the warband to come in
Yeah,
and make some stuff happen. So
yeah. And like with most other elite war bands, you really don't have any dead weight. All the fighters matter. All of them are
mm,
going to need to do work. So
yep,
yes, he's maybe like the the most bread and butter, but he is definitely going to still need to be involved for the
sure,
strategies to work out.
sure.
How about the Gore Hulk? What the heck is this guy about?
Well, let me first say this guy really looks like he's turning into a Korgoth, which is
Yeah,
a AOS kind of small monstery thing. There's a lot of visual cues that kind of make it look like he's headed that way,
very
um,
much so.
which is pretty fun. That poor model has never seen an independent release, but the Gore Hulk has no time for weapons. He just
No.
barehanding it. So gun show all day long for the Gore Hulk.
Oh yeah.
Starts out speed 3, 1 block, 5 health. So starts out large. Uh, 2 attack actions. His crushing grip is a very Ard Skull attack action. That's range 1, 2 fury, 3 damage. And then choking grip, range 1, 2 smash, 1 damage with throttle and stagger. So this guy can also stagger people. Um,
Yeah.
and then the throttle rule is after the deal damage step, give the target 1 move token and they cannot be driven back by this attack action. Then you can remove one of the fighter's blood tithe counters. If you do, deal 1 damage to that target. So you can optionally bump this attack up to 2. You're going to stagger them, and then if you give them a move token, they're going to need a push to get away from you.
Yeah.
So this is a way to kind of set up and lock down a fighter if you're not just going for the kill shot with your crushing grip.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that he is a brawler.
That's a good point.
There's a number of cards that have seen pretty good use that require brawlers, so
Yep. Yep.
something to keep in mind there. I was not expecting anything in a Corn War band to be handing out move tokens.
Yeah.
Um, I'm
I
very
like the idea
curious.
though. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very curious as to like how much of an impact that'll have. Do you think that there's a like is there going to be a good reason for wanting to focus on giving out move tokens rather than worrying about just killing opposing fighters?
I think it's going to be pretty situational. I think it becomes more and more important later in the game as there's fewer and fewer fighters.
Hmm.
Um, I think a lot of the fighters that would want to just stay and brawl with you are going to stay and brawl anyway, and a lot of the
Yeah.
fighters that would want to run away are potentially going to get killed if you go with the other attack.
Yeah.
Um, so that's tough. Not having played them out.
Yep.
It's hard to say, but uh, I I've played some warbands that tried to chase the stagger before, like my time with Daintalos. If you really want your attack that has stagger to get off, it's not going to land. So,
Yeah. Right. Well,
um,
and two smash is good, but not like super reliable. So I mean, if you're trying to use this as a setup, it's usually going to probably be about a 50-50. So
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I don't know.
This is a very random comparison, but I guess maybe not that much. But back in season one, there was Ard Skull's boys, not Ard Skull's boys, Iron Skull's boys.
Yeah.
Um, and their leader had a upgrade card, which I remember every time I saw it, I was like, "Oh man, this is so cool!" And it was
Headbutt.
headbutt. Yeah, exactly. 2 smash, 2 damage. Give the target a charge token. I was like, "That's amazing." You just lock somebody down because you hit them, and I was like, "Well, honestly, like his, and like he's hitting for 3 damage on his card. This could just be great strength and just kill the person."
Yeah,
You're like,
right.
okay,
Like, yeah, they can't run away if they're dead.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Uh, yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think there's a lot of experimentation to do with these guys, but
Mm,
uh, so this guy also, will get blood tithe. I don't know that there's really going to be a need to pull blood tithe off of the Gore Hulk.
mm,
Every so often, maybe, but like if you're doing the choking grip attack, I don't think you care about the damage anyway. So like, I think more often than not, you just stack them up.
yeah,
And
I think his biggest pull for those will be power cards, which we'll
yep,
talk about
yeah.
later. But are you about to talk about whether it's worth saving him up to inspire this guy?
Well, I was just gonna say that I think because of that, he'll probably be the one who inspires the most frequently,
Mm,
uh, and maybe intentionally, he also seems to get the most out of inspiring.
yeah, I think because he's stuck at range one, um, he's got the least control over his inspire. But yes, he's got the fewest things that are trying to drive him to pull those down. But yeah, that inspire is nice. Get an extra point of speed, an extra wound, which is a pretty rare thing to see
Yeah,
on a inspire. It goes up to 6. That makes him one of the top 4 biggest boys in the game. Um,
yeah,
and then crushing grip gets an extra dice. Choking grip gets an extra dice, and also gains ensnare, so it becomes fairly accurate. 3 smash ensnare.
yeah. I
So
think 3 fury, 3 damage is pretty nice.
yeah,
There's not too many more attacks that are more accurate than that with that much damage in the game. So,
yeah,
uh, like that. I don't know. I think he's your bruiser. I kind of wonder if you almost use him also as just like a protection piece. Like
mm,
it's like if you move in towards me, he's right there and he's scary. And he's hard to bring down. So
hmm,
I like the Gore Hulk's design. I think it'll be interesting to see what people come up with to just figure out what to do with him. One thing that I think could be fun, which maybe we'll hit on later more, but if you can give him scything, choking grip is very strange because you could give a move token to multiple fighters.
true. Yep. Um, yeah, I think he's the one that feels the most fun to me. Like when I think about which fighter I'm excited about
Yeah.
using on the table, also because his miniature is
Oh,
chunky.
yeah. Looking pretty cool. Well, I'll have to do a size comparison once I get him built.
Oh
See
yeah,
how does he stack up against some of these other big models.
yeah.
Um,
Get him next to Slake Slash. See what that looks like.
yeah. All right, but we've waited patiently. Now,
Mm-hmm.
probably the most important fighter for the warband, the
Yeah,
leader,
yeah.
Drom. What's his deal?
Drom is unsurprisingly also keyworded corn, and then he's the first one that we've seen printed on the card, a priest.
Yeah.
Um, what his real deal is he's got an amazing hat. So
Crazy hat, great big cape, weird
yeah,
like tusks all over him.
yeah.
Some interesting
It
fashion choices here.
it's that chaos vibe where you're like, I don't know if I'm looking at something that is a mutation of yours or if it is a fashion choice of yours. So
Yeah, maybe a bit of
um,
both.
exactly. But he looks pretty fabulous. So he's ready for the catwalk. But yeah, he's obviously the leader. He's a priest. Speed 3, 1 block, 5 health. So another large fighter right out of the gate. We're going to see for various reasons why it may be particularly important to keep him safe depending on how you built your deck. He starts with just a native range 2. So range 2, 2 smash, 2 damage.
Yeah.
Um, that's his blood blessed axe and staff. So that staff can reach out and touch people. That base range 2 means that he has the most potential for hitting again and again in a given round.
Yes.
Um, so he has the easiest time, I guess, generating blood tithe since he can potentially activate. He's less likely to have to charge to be able to get an attack off.
Yes.
However, he's got the greatest demand on his blood tithe as well.
Yeah, by a lot.
Yeah. And some of that is from this action that's right on his card. And this is Enrage. This is action. Remove X blood tithe counters from this card, where X is the round number. Choose a visible fighter with no move and or charge tokens within 4 hexes. The chosen fighter's player makes a charge action with that fighter, then stagger that fighter. +1 dice to friendly fighters' range 1 attack actions during that charge action. I'm going to admit to having forgotten about the stagger caveat there
Hmm.
when we're talking about it. So, lot to cover here, right?
Yeah.
It is cheap-ish early on, very expensive later on. 3 tithe is a lot to have built up and not used on other things. It is specifying, so you can be using it to send one of your friendly fighters in with a +1 dice on their attack, which is handy in and of itself.
Yeah.
But the one that generates the most question marks, and I don't mean that in a how does this work, but as a how can I get a lot of advantage out of this, is the you can force an enemy fighter to charge, which is pretty wild. First time we've really seen something like that.
Yeah. And I guess it makes sense with Corn that you're gonna like just give somebody like blind rage or whatever. But I honestly would not have, if someone were to ask me like, if you're gonna have a mechanic that forced an opponent's fighter to do something, what warband would that be? I probably would have said like Zinch or something.
Yeah.
But no, Corn. Uh,
I feel like on the Age of Sigmar tabletop, these guys have had a prayer for a while that can force an enemy unit to run at them. Um,
yeah, I
so
think they've
I
got some stuff like that.
must be capturing a bit of that. Uh, it's nuts. So I go back and forth between thinking like this is a crazy strong ability and being like, no, actually they've thought a lot about it. Because at one point I was like, well, yeah, you just you get those late game things where it's kind of a standoff. You each only have 1 or 2 fighters, and you're trying to get as many activations out of that now probably souped up fighter because they have the benefit of the whole game's worth of upgrades on them. Uh, you can use this to say, no, you're going to have 1 activation and that's it. And then you're going to be stuck because you're going to have a charge token.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah. So that's really, and I was like, oh, well, what I'm using in that case, I need 3 blood tithe. Okay. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I'll just do it in the first round and get somebody forward and then just wail on them for 4 activations. Like, well, no, I won't wail on them for 4 because I've used 1 to give them a free activation. So
Yeah.
they've gotten a charge with somebody and then still have their 4 activations remaining.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's so many like cost benefit analyses to do here.
yeah,
Um, I really think that we'll need to see them on the table to fully grasp like how good is this.
yeah.
My
It,
guess though, if I had to bet without seeing them on the table first, is that this is actually very good and very impactful. And the only reason that I think that is because there are so many limits on how it works.
mm-hmm.
The cost
Which,
increases every round.
yeah,
They have to be visible. They
yeah,
can't have a move or charge token already, and they have to be within 4 hexes.
yeah,
I get the
yeah.
feeling it started better, and they probably were like, "Whoa, this is too good."
Yeah. It does feel like an ability. They said we want him to be able to do this thing, make his own guys charge better, or force enemies to charge, and then they figured out all the things they had to do to make it reasonable. So yeah, I agree. This is 100% going to win a game
Oh yeah,
for somebody when they manage to pull this off at the right time. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, hold objective warbands, beware. This is going to be terrifying if he's got the ability to use it and it's like the last activation of the round.
yeah,
He's just going to pull you off. Like,
yeah.
and you're not going to be able to push back on. So, I think that is in and of itself. I mean, if these guys only play well into hold objective warbands, that'll be good enough by itself, probably.
hmm Talking about that huge drain on his in or on his blood tithe total, because he's going to be tempted to use it for this or other cards that we may talk about later. If somehow he managed to collect 3, maybe because he's saving up for that round 3 enrage, he will get an extra point of speed. His weapon will go from 2 smash to 3 fury, and it will gain grievous.
Yeah. Um, when I first saw the axe attack, I thought, wow, 2 range, 3 fury, 2 damage with Grievous. That's probably one of the better uh, just attack profiles that we've seen, because it's fairly accurate and has decent damage. And then, but you reminded me that season 1, we already had much better than that in the Warden.
Yeah, the
And
warden.
and then looking through a few other fighters, actually, there's already a number that are uh, pretty equal or even better than this. So I was a bit thrown off, probably because they're all warbands I don't really play.
Mm.
But
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot out there. That's every time now. I feel like we're about to make a statement like, I think this is the best or the only or the anytime we make some
yeah,
declarative
right.
superlative, I'm like, man, I can already feel myself being wrong here. I'm sure I have a blind spot to a warband out there that I'm just not thinking of at the
I
moment.
hear a future keyboard clacking to let us know that we are grossly mistaken. But so that's all the fighters. I guess it bears noting they start with 14 total wounds on just 3 fighters, so that's pretty nice. And
hmm
if you can inspire Gorehulk, you've got 15, which is the same as Crushes, which we know Crushes have always been really hard to shift.
mm
But there are some reasons for why they're hard to shift. So maybe it will not play out exactly the same, but I think high wound totals are just always a problem
Yeah,
that people have to solve. So
yeah.
seems like some interesting fighters, not as straightforward as I was expecting. I really thought it was just going to be Axes Go Burrcorn again. But no, definitely not.
Yeah.
But so now that we have the fighters sort of run down, we have to kind of decide what kind of strategy do we think works best for them for building this deck.
Yeah, I mean, there's jokes you can make like Gore Hulk Smash, right?
Yeah,
Like they're
right. Yeah,
they're obviously interested in brawling. Their whole Inspire mechanic involves them taking or dealing damage during an activation.
yeah,
Um, but the red flag here is that at the start, 2 of them have speed 3, one has speed 4. They've got a little bit better range, but I've done Steel Hearts plenty. Speed 3, range 1. That's a tough act to do if you're trying to go aggro.
yeah, yeah. Very.
Helped a little bit by the way that the Harrow Deep and Nether Maze seasons have made objective placement be. It's a little harder to hide way at the back than it was back in Night Vault and such. But yeah, that's a challenge you're gonna have to overcome.
For sure. So we got Brawly aggro,
Yeah.
as sort of the first option. Um, it does kind of seem like, given how tough they are, they might be able to pull off something in a bit of a Steelhearts vein, where they're more interested in finding a spot on the board that they want to sort of camp and then be like, well, either you come and shift me because I'm going to score if you don't, or you know, you try and stay away, and then uh, I just get to hang out on my objectives or whatever. And score up. I guess we also saw Crushes do that for a little while with their hold two strategies.
That is true.
So I think that's potentially an option, although I don't think they have as many tools for holding objectives, so it's maybe a little bit harder.
They
Uh,
yeah, they have a few things that are pointing them in that direction, or not in that direction specifically. There's a few cards that say like hold these objectives
yeah,
or be in this spot, but designers were fairly clever in trying to, I think, avoid that crush a thing, and a lot of those things require them. The in faction ones say like, yeah, you can hold stuff, but you need to be around the midline. You can't like walk into the back corner
yeah,
and talk about how much you love Blood and Skulls, but just stand around playing patty cake instead.
yeah. Some poser corn going on there.
Exactly, exactly.
So we know they've got some stuff that likes the middle of the board. So then there is a fairly common sort of just across the line aggro that I feel like I've seen a number of times this season. Kind of seems like maybe these guys could do that too.
I think so. I think you and I were talking about styles, and I think that's a little bit where we landed. Was this
Yeah,
might be the best bet
I think
moving
the
forward?
I think the surges lend themselves pretty well to that play style right now.
Yeah.
And then I think it's worth mentioning. Um, so we're probably not going to talk about it a lot, so we can kind of just get it out of the way here. Um, they have a couple of cards that care about fighters being wounded.
Mm,
Um, so there is a potential to build them as like a weird damaging control build where you're not trying to get kills necessarily, but you're just trying to spread out a whole bunch of damage.
yeah.
That definitely feels like the most risky choice, but it could work with the ability to make your opponent have to charge. And there's some other cards that we can cover too that talk about some control elements. I don't think we need to talk about it for that playstyle here because I think, like I said, it needs more experimentation. But if you're not already in that weird brain mindset, you can, and you like that kind of thing, like I do.
Yeah.
Uh, there's something here for those guys.
Yeah.
But so midline aggro, let's stick with that. It sounds like, and we can start building this deck.
Okay. Sounds good.
I think we usually like to start objectives, and knowing that we're pretty interested in being in the middle of the board, let's see what we can find for some surges to start with.
Yeah. And I think you were kind of the blazing the trail on this for us a little bit. The two that jump out as kind of partners there to some degree is Horrors in the Dark and Sudden Revelation.
Yeah. I think, if you've been playing this season, you've probably seen it. You get two fighters onto cover hexes and you flip them, and there you go. It should be fairly straightforward to be able to place one objective token just across the line and then put a cover hex in no one's territory. And then you just have to move your fighters onto those tokens, and you got yourself horrors. And if you're on those, you can flip them. So I think that would just make sense. That's pretty hard to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that is an easy starting point.
Well, and I'll say this, like, hard to stop, doubly so because if you are going to try to beat them to it, like, oh, I'm going to stand on this before they can stand on, they're like, sweet,
Great.
perfect.
Sounds good. I'll chop and chop and chop.
Yeah.
And I think that's also where their range 2 attacks are helpful, because
Mm.
if somebody comes forward, they can get free attacks. So,
Yep.
so there's two. I think it's worth mentioning that, again, they're in faction surges. There are only 4, which has been the pattern lately.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 of the 4 are kill surges.
Yes, of varying qualities.
Yeah.
I think there's one. Well, that three of the four are kill surges, and there's a universal that's just a better kill surge for them.
Yeah.
Now
Sort of steals their thunder a little bit.
a little bit, but you almost think of it as like they knew what they were doing with this release, like
Yeah.
what was coming out. So you figured somebody was like, yeah, this is effectively, this isn't a Gorechosen card, but it's a Gorechosen
Yeah,
card.
it's effectively like a fifth surge for their faction.
Yeah.
Um,
We are, of course, talking about Savage Slaughter. And this is a card that just is dropping simultaneous. It's a Chaos Grand Alliance one, Surge Hybrid. I honestly couldn't remember what the other caveat was. Uh,
I
what?
don't think it matters.
Yeah. The first one is score immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action that takes the target out of action if the friendly fighter is a beast or corn fighter. So Corn Warbands rejoice. You now have a kill surge that has no requirements about where you're standing, where the enemy's standing, any of that business.
No tokens
Just
that you need to have.
yeah,
Nothing about who has how many wound tokens. Just
yeah.
get a kill.
That's a pretty as kill surges come. It doesn't get any better than that. So
Yep. Yep.
it does have the other thing is like, or the friendly fighter has no upgrades, which is a pretty rough caveat to have. So,
Yeah.
but I think in my opinion, I think you probably throw Savage Slaughter in this
Yeah. I mean,
until you see otherwise. That's I think I'm almost always stuck putting at least one kill surge in, and you can't do better than Savage Slaughter for these guys.
definitely. I guess just to mention their in faction ones. One of them is basically it's like a season one reprint. Basically, you need to get a kill where you dealt exactly enough damage.
Hmm.
I don't actually remember what it was called, but we had the
Precise use of force is
yeah,
what you're
precise
thinking
use of
of.
force. It was exactly the same card, but it was universal back in the day. And
Yeah,
then brutal reckoning is you're killing somebody, and the friendly fighter had a blood tithe counter and or a wound counter, which probably also happens. Like if you didn't have that other one, I think
yeah,
brutal reckoning is maybe also quite straightforward. Though neither of them are bad as kill surges go. So like if you're doing Rivals Plus or something, that's actually pretty nice.
yep,
And then the other one is a little bit weirder. Not technically a kill surge, but it's a duel where if an enemy fighter is taken out of action, doesn't matter how, and a domain gambit is persisting, you get to score this. Um,
yeah. That's actually an interesting one because I mean I don't think we're taking it, but I
no,
think there's a build that's real ping heavy,
yes,
and they have a lot of different domains. So this is one that um, you could score off of the back of pings. Is that even true? Is it after an activation or just
no,
after?
just immediately
Yeah.
after. So it can
Okay.
happen anytime. So you get
Yeah.
scored after a power step or after an activation step.
Yeah. Power step scores are always pretty handy.
Yeah. I think the potent offering surge is one that goes in that control build instead of the aggro builds. So we
Sure.
definitely don't want it now. But I think that there is play for it.
Yeah. Uh,
Uh,
so that puts us at three surges right now.
Three. Yeah.
We're Savage Slaughter, Sudden Revelation, Horrors in the Dark. Um, I think it may be early to use a restricted, but I think this is a warband. I'd probably put Contest to Equals in.
Yes. I think most warbands that are going to be planning on making any amount of attacks, I think you just put it in. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a good chance of it just kind of happening incidentally.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's always the lucky, no one rolled successes. I guess
Yep.
I'll score this.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so I like that one. I think it's a perfect use for a restricted slot in the current meta. And then we've got to figure out two more. I think at this point you're starting to get into some less ideal options. In their faction cards, the remaining surge is one I would consider. So this is you score immediately after a friendly fighter is dealt damage by an attack action that did not take them out of action. Uh, with 5 and 6 wound fighters, that feels pretty likely to come up.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
think I'm I think I'm putting this in. I think there's more and more. I mean, we do get into these one shot ranges, but I think early on this is pretty scoreable.
yeah,
Um,
and I feel like
if
most folks are usually not going too far above 4 damage in an attack, and
yeah,
since that's still not putting them in one shot kill territory for your warband, feels like it'll probably come up at some point in the game.
yeah. So that's Untouchable Fury. Uh, we have 5 surges now, 1 restricted. Where else can we look?
Well, so we do have some of the other flip options. Um, so ever downwards is a bit of a stretch, but if you feel pretty good about the second condition where you can flip it with a leader and score that way,
Hmm.
maybe. But I don't know that you want to put drum on that hex, at least not right away. So it is a possibility, but it feels a little risky. And then shadow elimination, sort of the same deal. In fact, it's probably worse because shadow elimination is both you have to flip it in enemy territory and you have to be on it after the power step ends.
Yeah,
So I think we can definitely just not take that one. And then the only other one that I pulled out that might just be a pretty easy option for chaos, since they're a chaos warband, is All Too Real. This does give us another build restriction though, in that we do need illusions. Um, well, we don't have to, but it's easy to score with illusions. So for folks who aren't very familiar with the card, this is a hybrid surge where you can either score it by having a friendly fighter's upgrade attack action take a target out of action. Yuck. Or a friendly fighter can make a successful illusion attack action.
yeah. I it's it really kind of pushes us a particular way in deck building, which I don't think we're ready
It
to
does.
do
Yeah.
just yet.
I,
So
I was thinking the same thing. So those are the options that I had pulled as things that felt like they kind of work with this sort of like hold in the middle strategy. Is there anything else that you thought of or
um so there's some questions about like uh do we put primacy into the mix with this warband?
yeah.
Depending on what power cards we have, could affect some of that stuff. I there let's see. I Branching Fate is not great because
No.
you're not getting there with that. The There's Kill Surges, which are tough because that's we already have the one. Not super excited to do more than that.
Yep.
So it is. I think the question is raised as does including primacy in this make sense, or what else can we do there?
Yeah.
Uh,
I think including primacy is not a bad choice. You're not going to give it up very much.
yeah, uh,
Uh,
that's true. And the only other thing is like that something like Surge of Aggression is going to uh, give you the problem of you will give up another restricted slot to pull it
yeah.
in.
Um, it would be very easy to score. Uh, so maybe we temporarily put that one in
Sure.
because it's super simple and then see where we end up in power and upgrades as to like, are we feeling pinched by not having access to more restricted?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair way to go. Um, there's the Deadly Depths didn't have a whole lot as far as surges go.
No.
The only one I looked at there is a Surging Darkness. Immediately after an activation, if 2 or more friendly fighters with charge tokens are on feature tokens, um, just with only three of you
Yeah,
there, you're interested in being on them, but it's maybe a little bit too restrictive in your positioning to ask for that.
I agree. I also think that there's a fair chance, at least in my mind, that you just if you're wanting to, round one, you probably just use a move action with Drum rather than a charge,
Mm,
get him into position, and then he's like, well, I'm reach two, and if you want to come towards me, you can. Because then he has the actions for enrage still open, but he's put himself in a much better position to use it, and then he can just reach out and touch people with that staff. So
yeah,
um, that then means if you have it in your opening hand, it's even further limiting your options.
yeah,
So I agree. So I think we kind of can keep like that one or something like Ever Downwards as sort of potential backups, but I don't feel great about either of those options. So um, we'll hopefully just be able to go with the restricted, and we'll get primacy in the deck and see how that plays out.
we'll just go open the waking gate and be all set.
Sure. Um, yeah. You want to? No, we won't spend
Yeah,
time on that here.
it's a crazy three glory surge that came out in the universals with these guys, and if you want to break down on that, you can check our blog or any one of the
Yeah,
uh, people are doing the card by card.
it
Yeah,
is a weird one. Okay. So we've got our surges. We're pretty solidly just kind of being able to score from moving towards the middle of the board. So where does that leave us for what we want to look for in end phase?
mm. uh, what I was hoping to prioritize with these picks are things that can score if the enemy has said, like, I want to avoid fighting these guys for as long as possible.
Yep.
If they're going to hang back, uh, because I think these guys will be happy if you're coming to them and they can just start throwing punches. So you need to be able to score something reliably on your way in.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm looking at more single glory end phases than I might
Yeah.
otherwise do. But there's some twos in there. Was there anything in faction that jumped out at us?
Yeah. So I think one to consider, especially as that sort of like moving in score, is worshipped in battle. This
Mm,
is a duel for two that you score in an end phase if two or more surviving friendly fighters have one or more blood tithe counters, which in round one is pretty much, if you want it, it's a guaranteed thing. And those fighters are within one hex of no one's territory, which we decided is what we want to do. So, I mean, I think it has a much tougher time in the late game. You might be using up those blood tithe. You may have been forced out of standing right in the middle of the board, but uh, for a passive two score, that feels pretty solid to me.
it does. It's one of those. I tend to prioritize an objective if you can score it early without a whole lot of help, and this is one of those.
Sure is.
You all start with a tithe, so even if they turn around and run away from you, you can just walk forward
Yep.
and get this pretty easily.
Yeah. Or
Um,
if they've longboarded you and there's zero chance they are getting to the enemy, you're like, well, I guess I'll just go stand in the middle.
yeah, hope you picked a smart longboard choice then. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I think we can start with that. I think after some playtesting, you decide whether that feels like it should
Yeah.
stay or not.
Yeah. We can, I mean, I think there's some potential that late game it is too risky and it has to be pulled. But I think for right now, it seems like it's probably right in the game plan and easy enough to score.
Sure.
Another in faction end phase. What do you got?
There's if we're still talking about midline, there's some of these ones. Actually, I'll detour again for a second. Away from those ones, there's another two glory that I'm pretty interested in. This is Glorious Battle.
Yep.
Uh, Score this in an end phase if four or more fighters each have one or more charge tokens and or one or more blood tithe counters.
Yeah.
Um, So the 4 charges is like that means that you're, because there's 4 fighters have to do something. This is one of your enemies has to do something, and they generally can't have blood tithe unless you're mirror matching. Um,
It's great in a
and
mirror
so,
match.
yeah. So what you need is for the enemy to make a charge. Now, if you notice, if you get a situation where like, well, an enemy made a charge in that first round, then you've got this, as long as you
Yep.
have your 3 guys alive. So I think in my mind that was worth doing. And then later you're probably going to be mixing up, your 3 will charge. This feels similar. It doesn't feel busted, but it feels doable. And at 2 glory, I'm willing to give it a go.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of enemy warbands that will make a charge.
Yeah.
For some reason or another, if they've got like a range 2 fighter and they're like, well, I'll just come in and, start putting damage down, or they've got range 3 and they're like just wanting to start to ping damage, because they know they need to hit multiple times to bring these guys down.
Hmm.
And if you can pretty well guarantee that somebody is going to have a charge counter, then you can just be like, well, I can, as long as the one opponent charges, you can pretty much guarantee this, and that's about as much as you can ask for a 2 glory end phase.
I think so. So I'm down with that.
Yeah,
They it's for a different play style. There's Grim Satisfaction is a 3 glory thing that has a lot of restrictions. You can read about it if you want,
yeah,
but it
I have
won't
blood.
match ours. But anytime somebody's got a 3 glory end phase that's not third end phase, I'm like, oh, what? Tell me more.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, and it spoiler alert, it does not require kills, so that is also kind of
Mm,
a really interesting point there. I mean, a lot
yep.
of times you'll see these glory end phase, but it's like more fighters, enemy fighters, are out of action than are alive, and it's like, well,
Mhm.
uh, that's probably not happening most games.
Yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, so I don't know. That one's interesting, but we can revisit in a later time, and you guys can go read about it. So we've got 2 glory end phases so far, 2 of them.
Hmm.
Do we want to stick with anything else in faction, or do we start looking at universals at this point?
The only other in faction that I wanted to mention, there's two. One is very positioning agnostic, and this is a worthy offering.
Yeah,
And this is 1 glory in the end phase if your warband has 2 or more blood tithe counters. Super easy. That
yeah,
actually feels super easy up and down the line, because you either have it at the start because you started with them, or you have it later because you've landed some hits or been hit. You could have both those blood tithe on the same person. So
yeah,
uh, I think I start with that in, and then pull it if I find. I don't think you're going to find much more reliably going off. I think you pull it if you need to increase your glory ceiling or something. But
yeah. Agreed. I mean, like the only reason you wouldn't use that, I think, is if you just are like, I don't have enough glory. I just need to have higher ceiling on the glory total, which
yeah,
I think almost every deck tends to run at least one glory end phase, because it's like, I need something reliable here,
yeah,
and that's about
uh,
as reliable as they come.
it does. The other one that I don't want to put in right now, but want to keep in mind if we are running out of options, is blood claim.
Yeah,
This is score this in an end phase if 1 or more friendly fighters each hold an objective within 1 hex of no one's territory. So, are you holding an objective in and around the midline? You're hopefully already trying to do something like that with Horrors in the Dark or um, Sudden Revelation. You're incentivized to step onto one of those features. It's a little tough, but it is a thing that you can just kind of score on your way through. Um,
yep,
so keep it in mind. But I think I'm down to take a look at some of the other some of the universals if you are.
yeah. I think we can at this point just say quickly that the remaining end phase cards are either you could argue that they're just for a different playstyle, or you could just say that they're probably just not worth it. The amount of work for what you get is not valuable.
Mm.
Um, so in terms of universals, the first one that jumped out to me, since we wanted to go and stand in the middle and we only have three fighters, is Unafraid. Um, I do think there's some risk always in playing Unafraid if your opponent really is just like, I'm going to stay as far away from you as physically possible.
Yeah.
But I tend to find that most warbands don't do that these days. Somebody will charge forward usually. And with only three fighters, getting them all nearby that enemy fighter is not usually too difficult.
Yeah, I'm all right with including that. I think you're going to be in getting mixed up. Um, we can, as with anything, we can pull it if we feel like we're running into trouble with it later. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a fine inclusion.
And I think Enrage can actually force the matter in some cases.
Sure.
Um, it won't happen all the time, but I mean, there'll be situations where you're like, everywhere you go when you charge, you're going to be within two of all my fighters.
Yep.
Um, so I think that that's pretty solid play here. Uh, do you have any universals that jumped out to you?
Uh, it was a little tough. Path to victory was a possibility because you're trying to get kills. It does
Yeah,
kind of force you onto an objective, so that's not great.
the
Um,
second objective, I think, is what hurts there, right?
yeah, exactly. So that felt like too much to ask because you'd have to have two specifically positioned, and that's maybe a little too much. Um, these guys have a number of pings, so Chum felt possible. They have
Mm-hmm.
some higher damage profiles, so you may just accidentally be killing people as they,
Yeah.
which there's worse problems to have. But that's in the conversation for me.
Yeah, I think Chum is reasonably reliable. You like you said, if you run pings, you can almost guarantee it. But there's a bit of a push and pull of like how many. If I'm playing like push forward aggro, stand down, cover hexes, how many pings can I afford to put in the deck, kind of thing.
Yeah,
And to make Chum reliable, you need probably more than one way to make it happen. So
yeah,
I like it, but I do worry a little bit about it as well. Um, one that I think is interesting, and this is actually one that I've seen a couple times now from our local Wormspat player, is cryptic clues.
mm,
So normally this would be terrible because you have to have all your friendly fighters on a feature token in a cover hex or in a lethal hex. But with only three fighters, that's actually not too terrible. And it gets easier if you lose a fighter.
sure,
But you do have to have two. So if you lose both of them, or if you lose two of your three, you're out. But um, it's not too hard to imagine moving forward onto an objective or a cover hex, and then
mm,
finding some way to get a third fighter onto one if you know you need it. So it kind of fits with the like, let's score stuff as we move forward, but it has its risks as well.
sure. So let's see. We have worshipped in battle, a glorious battle, a worthy offering. Are our three in faction ones. We've thrown out and we've got unafraid.
Mm-hmm.
So um,
So we just need two.
we just need two. We have three of ours are two glory end phases so far, and one of them is a oneer. I think there's room for another reliable oneer, and I would suggest Wasteland for that.
Yeah, I think that the chances of there being an objective in your territory are pretty low,
Yeah,
unless your opponent uses Step Between Shadows and then dunks on you. But that's a risk I guess we'd probably have to be willing to take.
yeah,
Um, I don't know what else we would put in that is going to be as reliable.
yeah.
Um,
Which leaves us just one more. We got all our surges are single glory. So right now we are looking at, let's see, We've got 11, and then 3 of them give us one more glory. So we're at 14, but we're still short one objective. So
Mm-hmm.
that'll put us on track for a 15 or 16 glory
Yeah.
deck. With aggro, I'm okay trying that. We've put some fairly reliable ones in there,
Yeah.
one glories. So
Do we just put in Proud Commander to round it out?
hmm.
It's third end phase, but it's like if we have reliable scoring, it's hard to stop. I don't know if that is.
That's interesting. Could be Proud Commander. So it's here we're making the decision between like Proud Commander, Chum, or Cryptic Clues.
Yep.
Is kind of where we're at. So I'm gonna say Chum for now, but let's circle back around. If we don't feel like if we didn't feel like we had room for Ping or something like that,
Sure.
um, I do. I I'm mixed on Proud Commander. Uh, when the problem is it can't help you along the way,
It
and
does not.
then so you're effectively operating with 14 until you get there. Um, well, I don't know. What do you want? I'll leave it up to you. What do you think, Chum or Proud?
I think we probably go with Chum, like you say. I think it forces our hand a little bit in the gambits, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
All right,
I think
that
I think if
I
the
can get
meta
down with that.
shifts, if holding is less important, you don't bring Chum as much
Sure.
because you do like we're not gonna probably have the distraction esque options to force people onto cover hexes. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. I can for listeners who are building along. I think we see that almost swappable with Proud. Like we're real close on that one way or the other.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's our 12
All right.
on objectives.
So we've got a solid list of objectives. I think they're all pretty passive, really. There's only like one that we have to get a kill for,
Yeah.
truly, and then everything else is going to kind of come along as we go. So that's pretty
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Um, so how about some gambits to help support that strategy? What
Sure.
do we want to do here?
Uh, I think we agree that you need speed. Um,
You need some way of closing the gap. That is for sure.
yeah. Actually, man, while we're talking about ways of closing the gap, and since we often start with in faction stuff, let's just take a second to appreciate Call of Blood.
Oh my god.
Oh my God.
This card.
I'm going to read it out here. So it is a prayer. It is restricted to Drom. This is choose up to 2 fighters. That's friendly or enemy. Push each chosen fighter 1 hex towards the nearest fighter from an enemy warband. So whatever is enemy relative to that chosen fighter. If a chosen fighter has 1 or more blood tithe counters, you can remove one of that fighter's blood tithe counters. If you do, push the chosen fighter up to 2 hexes towards the nearest fighter from an enemy warband instead. Weirdly, if there's a mirror match, you can be removing enemy blood tithe there.
Yeah,
But yeah.
wow, what a play.
Holy cow. So this is like a directional double distraction or a directional double sidestep.
Yeah.
Or if you're willing to burn blood tithe on it, you can push 2 your guys 2 towards the enemy.
Yeah.
You could do if you have like 2 fighters and you really want them to kiss, you can have them each push 1 towards the other. Or if you're your own, you could burn blood tithe on it. So you could close a gap of 3 spaces
Yeah.
between 2 fighters. Pick an enemy and pick a Gorechosen, burn their blood tithe, and move the enemy 1 towards you and you 2 towards the enemy. That's
yeah. Which yeah, I mean, there was a lot of distance between those 2 fighters before they were pushed, right? Because if you pushed them in 1 and you up 2, there was 4 hexes in between, right? Because no,
yeah, no, 3,
yeah,
but they were
3,
4
but
away.
you're 4
Like
away. Yeah.
you could have been
That's what
out
I
of
was
range
thinking.
of most shooting
Yeah,
attacks.
you were out of
And then all
range
of a
of
sudden
pretty
you're
much
base to
everything.
base. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, most of the time when a warband has double pushes, it's for small fighters that are less impactful,
Yeah.
um, unless you're deaf. Uh, but we don't need to. Anyway, but yeah, I really like this card. It is restricted. You have to have Drama Live to use it, but like, I don't see how you're ever not bringing this. At the very worst, you could just push your two other dudes forward one hex, and they just go towards enemy fighters, and which is what you want to be doing, and that's
Yeah.
great. Uh, or you push two enemy fighters off of their feature tokens. Like a
Yeah.
double distraction is pretty nuts.
Yeah. This is powerful enough that I'm saying fine on the restricting.
Yes. In fact, have we had, other than Wanchi's device in the Starblood Stalkers, have we had any other double distraction cards?
I mean, only if you're really cleverly engineering your center of attention, or
Right.
back in the day, the was it something prize, irresistible
Yeah,
prize,
irresistible
which was
prize
center of attention just on a
on a
objective.
objective. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, talk about disruption. Um, and so flexible. I think that's probably maybe the strongest thing about it is like you can just make sure that it fits whatever need you currently have.
Yeah.
Like that a lot. So got that one in there right away. Easy choice.
Hmm.
So that's a one push, I guess. So you can kind of go two different ways with speed, right? You can either make your fighters faster, or
Hmm.
you can just move fighters with things like pushes.
Hmm.
Do we think we want more push tech or more speed tech?
I usually default to pushes. I think there is one actually new card that I thought was worth mentioning,
Mm-hmm.
and this is depth charging.
Yeah.
It's a domain gambit. It is in here with the Gorechosen universals. And this is +1 move to friendly fighters, move actions that end in enemy or no one's territory. This effect persists until the end of the round or until another domain gambit is played. Uh, that feels pretty boss. It's kind of eternal chase that doesn't affect the enemy and doesn't have the weird hunter quarry things,
Yeah.
but it'll let you get Herrex up to speed 5.
Yep.
Pretty nice.
Pretty solid.
And these are all the directions you're headed for anyway. And so what's attractive about this is effectively you can get money, your money's worth out of it three times. Um,
Hopefully. Yeah.
like
That's
yeah, yeah,
most likely going to be the case.
sure,
Uh, I definitely think it goes in. I think it's a strong option, especially for 3 move warbands. You obviously not being able to show people the card, but you'll be able to go see it over on the blog. It does have hexbanes on it when it seems like it matches them pretty well.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
I think they like it.
yeah. But so
Dogs get even faster.
I agree. They this should be good, and unlike um, Eternal Chase, you can make a fighter who's speed 4 even faster. So if
Yeah.
they're inspired, they're all speed 5 now, and it's pretty nice. So there's 2 pieces of movement tech. I don't think there's any other movement tech in the new cards, are there?
Uh, Nothing screaming out at me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is a new in the Deadly Depths card pack. There is another new universal double push, but you have to move your friendly fighters so that they end that push either on a cover hex or in enemy territory.
Yeah, actually, that might be worth taking here. That actually is pretty strong, isn't
Yeah,
it? Like,
it's pretty decent.
because it's choose up to 2. So if you only have one,
Yeah,
uh,
that's true.
like once you're in enemy territory,
It's just a free double push.
it's a free double push. If you have 2 in there, if you only have one who's made it in enemy territory, it's a sidestep. Sidestep strong.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair. And
and
this is
if
called "We Must Go Deeper." I should have
yeah,
started with the name.
uh, yeah, I like it. Let's do it.
Okay. Cool. So then we have a as a third piece of movement tech. Do we go for four?
Let's look around elsewhere. Um,
Yeah,
I and then come back to it if we want.
I guess
Um,
right off the bat, though, if I were to just earmark one to come back to, it would be center of attention, I think.
I had exactly the same thought because it does. It's just so flexible. There's so many different things that it
Yeah.
does. So
Yep.
um,
Okay. So other things. So I think we're a warband that wants to get in the thick of things, and unfortunately, that does mean rolling some dice. Uh, so we probably want to grab something that adds some accuracy.
mhm.
And I think there's a new card that we're going to see a lot of.
Yeah. This is a corrupted companion. Is this one we're thinking of
Yeah,
here?
yeah,
It is. Uh, it is choose one friendly fighter, deal one damage to the chosen fighter, plus two dice to the first attack action made by the chosen fighter in the next activation step. If the chosen fighter is a companion, blah 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 blah.
yeah.
So
You know if it applies to you. Most of the time, it won't. Um, plus two dice at any range. Wow. Okay. Universal. I think we'll be seeing this a lot. I think Molag is going to terrify some people coming up here pretty
yeah,
soon.
oof, yeah.
Uh,
Um, this is reminiscent of things like Haymaker, which were all over the place back in the day.
yep. Uh,
These plus two.
plus two. Yeah, it is basically exactly Blood Offering from the Reavers,
Mm,
which is
yep.
also deal one damage to a fighter. They get plus two dice in their next attack action, which I always felt like it was very balanced because it was for Reavers. This is probably not. I also
Yeah,
think this is probably going to be getting restricted, but as of right now, it definitely won't be, and it should be very good. So get it in there.
yeah, yeah,
I think any deck that needs a pretty big accuracy boost is probably putting it in.
yeah. Um, there is something like Live for the Fight we could put in there. There's
Yep.
King of the Deeps. Uh, King of the Deeps is plus one dice or plus two if your one of your attack actions are greater than the target's wound characteristic.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the Gore Hulk could probably make some work with that. If you give him
mhm,
any sort of damage upgrade, he's suddenly four damage, and there's a lot of fighters now that don't have four wounds. So getting plus two dice against those fighters feels pretty nice.
mhm,
And it just plus one dice isn't bad either. So, I mean, that's flexibility.
mhm.
I would be fine with either of those options. I don't know that there's another accuracy boost that I would be super happy about taking. So,
Yeah. Let's mark it for King of the Deeps right now, since you can get up on some damage and
yeah,
go there.
sounds good. So, we are at what, four surges we've locked in
Uh,
at this point?
Gambits, I've got us actually on
Oh, yeah, gambits.
six.
Six? Okay.
Uh, yeah, I've got Call of Blood, our push that we're in love with. Depth
Hmm.
Charging, which is a speed boost.
Yep.
We Must Go Deeper is another double push. Center of
Mhm.
Attention, which is a flexible do everything card.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Corrupted Companion, King of the Deep. So two accuracy, three speeds, and then one very flexible push.
Okay. So, uh, at this point, we can kind of go a number of different directions. Do we look at pings to put in for making Chum more reliable?
Mm.
Um, I think we almost have to, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So,
Uh, there's the obvious of Suffocating Mists.
yep, that one's
There's
pretty
the
good.
In Faction. This is having used the Lumineth, the Miari's Purifiers sort of version. Um, there's Blood Boil, which is choose a fighter within two hexes of a friendly Drom, deal one damage to the chosen fighter. Two's a pretty big bubble. Having it just be around the one fighter though is a little challenging, restrictive. Um,
Yeah.
And if he goes down, then that's a dead card. So I think the safer pick is Suffocating Mist.
Yep.
Um, and I know you're not going to want to hear this, so we'll make this an option one way or the other. But Blind Gamble here, you've got a couple
uh,
potential range 2 and high quality attacks
I'm
here.
I'm more okay with it. I think for these guys, knowing that you you probably only have one objective you're going to care about with these guys, so it's like
Yeah.
I can remember one number.
Yeah.
The ping off of it, I think, is more difficult, but
Hmm.
because you're just gonna have to know what numbers your opponents are on. But I think it's also doable. So
Yeah.
that probably is a solid choice. Free attacks or ping kind of fits into both of the things we're trying to do.
Blind Gamble.
Blind
Boosh.
gamble. There you go. It's
Yeah.
in. So that's two.
Yeah.
Uh,
Worth
and
worth noting, remember that it's an activation is what gets you blood tithe. So if you're making an attack
yes,
action off of this, you won't be able to get blood tithe from it.
correct. It has to be
Uh,
during the activation step.
I while we're talking about pings, I have to bring up this card. It is also restricted, but in a rare play, we haven't really gotten into. There's a ton of prayers and such that are restricted to Drom.
Yeah.
This one is restricted to Gorehulk,
Ooh,
and it's
yeah.
called Overhead Smash.
They should have
Play
just
this.
called it Gore Hulk Smash.
Play this only in a power step following your activation. You cannot play this in your last power step of the round. Choose a fighter adjacent to a friendly Gorehulk. At the start of your next activation, deal 2 damage to the chosen fighter if they are adjacent to a friendly Gorehulk. When this card deals damage, you can remove 1 blood tithe counter from a friendly Gorehulk. If you do, this card deals 3 damage to the chosen fighter instead.
Oh boy.
Whoa.
uh, it's, I mean, it's basically a kill on a ploy, which
Yeah.
is insane. The thing I worry about with this card, like when I first read it, I was like, oh my goodness, they really put this in here. They're just going to let you kill somebody in the power step. And then I was like, you have to wait a
Yeah.
whole activation before
Yeah.
this triggers and a whole power step. Uh, Potentially, I mean, it'll be in your power step that you play it, and then your opponent could react during your power step. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's the activation, and then the next power step, and then it triggers. So I do worry that maybe you won't be able to lock somebody down to actually deal the damage. But man, if you can do it,
Yeah.
whoo boy.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe you made somebody charge,
Yeah,
and
and
so
then
then
they
they have a
don't have
charge check.
any push cards in hand.
Yeah.
I really like the card. I don't know that it fits great into our strategy right now.
Right.
Um, but I'd be tempted to try it.
I just on the basis of it being like really fun looking, um, is something that makes it particularly tempting.
Yeah.
Um, what else was I going to say? The other ping dimension from the faction is Wound the Realm.
Oh
It's
my
also
goodness.
restricted to
Yes.
Jom. Choose 1 fighter within 1 hex of no one's territory. Deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter. When you play this card, you can remove all blood tithe counters, at least 1, from a friendly Drom. And if you do, deal 1 damage to each fighter within 1 hex of no one's territory instead. So, like, there's just a huge, I don't know, lava explosion burns straight through the middle of the board and gets
Yeah.
some kills.
Uh, the flavor text for this card is a blow that sunders the very realm itself.
Yeah.
And the art definitely looks like that is what happened.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously we're not playing this, right?
No.
But I think that there is a deck for this. But it's definitely an oddball. That is very close to a Shard Gale in some games,
Mm.
and Shard Gale was busted back in the day. So
Yeah.
I think this is a card to keep your eye on. I think this is a card to experiment with. I do not think this is a card as a first try.
Right.
So definitely keeping it out, but it is another ping, and it's pretty interesting.
All right.
There is
We are
an
still at 7 gambits, just to
Yeah.
update.
It's just a
So
quick update there. There is one other uh universal, well, not quite universal, but there's a ping that it's a little hard to use, but might have some interesting applications is chaotic paths.
mm,
I don't know how much I like this card, but I kind of like the flexibility of it. So it's chaos restricted, which obviously is fine for us. You choose an enemy fighter with no move or charge tokens, so that's already kind of eh. But then you deal 1 damage to that fighter, which okay, if we need to just put damage on somebody to get chum, now obviously they can just move. But like, if it's the choice between stand on this hex for another round or be damaged and potentially give up chum, I'm not feeling too terrible about that option.
mm,
And then the other mode on this is that you scatter 3 from the fighter's hex and push that fighter along the chain to the end of the hex. And if it's interrupted, you can't push them any further. Um, that I don't think the second part comes up as much because they won't have a move or charge token, but pulling people out of position is not a bad thing.
yeah, I think my vote against this stems entirely from your opponent being able to be the one to make the choice. So if you say,
Oh yes,
yeah,
your opponent, their fight. Never mind. Yep, I
yeah,
missed that part.
uh, so your target is
Yeah,
already pretty restricted, and then they're going to pick the thing
yeah,
that
they're gonna
if
just
they're way
scatter.
in the back, they say, "Oh, sure, I'll take it. I'd rather take a damage than get pulled in towards one of your big guys." Or
Hmm.
say, "I think you might be working on chum. I'm just going to scatter off of this. No big
Yeah.
deal."
Um.
There's some infaction that I am pretty interested in still.
Sure.
We're kind of in. So we've got a ping, 2 accuracy, 3 speeds, and a utility push is where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Um, there there is one. There's like 3 prayers, domain prayers that Drom can do.
Yeah.
Uh, they're all fine. One I'm looking at looks particularly disruptive, and this is Domain of Wrath. Uh, when activated, fighters must make a charge action if they can. This effect persists until the end of the next activation or until another domain gambit is played. Um, I think I think this is one that is like situationally crazy,
Yeah. It could
where you
really
can,
just
yeah,
destroy someone's game plan.
right. Like playing this into the Exiled Dead is real rough for them,
Yeah.
because this prevents Markov or Daintalos doing their special thing. If they have the ability, if they're in a position where they would be able to charge, then they'll have to
Yeah.
charge. If they're not, then they can kind of get away with it. So
And it really
I
messes up Daintalos because he's got that range 3 attack.
exactly. So you can move somebody close enough to have him throw a little stagger ping out and then make him charge out from behind his wall. I don't. I just wanted to keep that in mind. The other ones, there was. What do you think of Blood Curdling Roar? This is a reaction. Use this before you would remove 1 or more Blood Tithe counters from a friendly fighter with 0 or more Blood Tithe counters. When you do, you're considered to remove 1 additional Blood Tithe counter. So it's kind of like a free Blood Tithe. I
Yeah.
So it lets
Only
you
if you have
enrage for free. Go ahead.
it only will let you do stuff for free if you already have 0, right? Because it's when you remove a blood tithe, you are considered to have removed 1 additional blood tithe. So if the removal would be 0, you would count as 1. But if you
Oh, this
have
is when
1,
you would remove 1. So I'm about to. When you do, you consider remove 1. I see what you're saying.
I
Interesting.
don't think you can choose to not remove blood tithe and still get the effect. But I think if you have 0, you could say, I want to remove a blood tithe. But because you don't
Mm,
have any to remove, you're counted as removing 1 more, and then it still triggers.
I see. Okay, that's less helpful then.
Yeah,
It lets you do blood tithe things when you're down to 0, and it lets you enrage
when you're 1 short.
uh, when you're 1 short. which is not nothing, but it's not as cool. All right,
Yeah, I think
we'll
it
set that
probably
aside.
started differently. I would be my guess.
Mm,
And they were probably, I guess, too good. A free blood tithe on anything is too good. I could be
yeah,
wrong, but that's how I was reading it
yeah,
because it doesn't say instead like you get one. It's like because it's saying like when you do remove, the blood tithe, you're counted
yeah.
as removing one more. Um, I think Domain of Fury is pretty disruptive. Um, so when a fighter begins a move, that move action cannot end further from the closest enemy fighter.
That's a good point.
So, and I guess it goes. It's worth mentioning all the domain ploys can be made to be persisting.
Mm,
You have to remove a blood tithe, but then they remain for the remainder of the round. Um, I don't. The thing that I struggle with these is it's like they all seem situationally amazing, and
yeah,
then there might just be cases where your opponent's like, okay, I don't care. And you're just like, well, dang it. I played
yeah.
that. And not that it's really come up much to date, but the volume of domains here starts to become a potential problem as well.
Hmm.
They all cancel each other. So,
And we already have one domain in our deck with depth charging.
yeah. So I do like Domain of Fury and Domain of Wrath. I think Domain of Blood, which is fighters cannot be healed or driven back. I like eh, again, situationally could be good, but like most of the time I don't think I care. I'd be fine with either Domain of Wrath or Domain of Fury, but I do wonder if do we go for a more guaranteed benefit or a bigger blowout in the situations where it's useful.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we're hitting a lot of the faction cards here, but
Yeah, we have talked about a lot of them.
there's I one card I think I do want to include. This kind of sidestepping that whole conversation.
Yeah,
Skin of
let's,
Brass.
yeah, an easy choice.
Yeah, choose one friendly fighter. This is also prayer, so you need Drama Live. Choose one friendly fighter, -1 damage to attack actions that target the chosen fighter to a minimum of one. Persist until the end of round or until the chosen fighter is dealt damage. Uh, Pretty great.
Yep.
People are really big for good reason on Death Soldiers, which is a better version of this, but this is still pretty good.
Hmm.
And you're going to have somebody who's up in harm's way, and you just make sure that they are more likely to survive that attack / get blood tithe off of it.
Yeah. It could even be to the point where it's like your opponent will ignore the fighter that you put this on entirely, which may be
Mm,
exactly what you want. If you play it on Drum, for instance.
right. That puts us at 8 gambits. Need 2 more.
Yep.
Universal or otherwise. Is there anything jumping at you?
So let's just put in one of the domain of either Wrath or Fury just to try it and see how it goes. I
Sure.
think maybe Wrath is a bigger blowout, so we can start there, and then
Okay.
for our last one, I mean, pushes are not terrible to have,
Yeah.
so we could always just take another push. Uh, I don't know if there's one that you'd like to have, but I guess if I were to pick one right now, if I was just like pick a push, I'd probably say Cover of Darkness.
I can do that. Sure.
Um, just because it's two and it gets us onto cover and situationally preventing gambit damage might come up. I've pretty much never used that mode though.
Yeah. Well, Mark, your cover of darkness and your mileage may vary. If you want something that can't accidentally get blocked, then reach for uh, mirror move or sidestep or
Countercharge. Actually, you know what?
mm,
Countercharge could be pretty interesting. Maybe I'm thinking too far with this, but if you use Enrage, you can use Countercharge off the Enrage
whoa. Okay.
because they're making a charge. So after they
Yeah.
finish their move, then you get to push three up to that fighter
Yeah. All
and
right.
just surround
Just for
them.
that crazy mad science X, we're doing counter charge.
Okay.
But I think we agree that 10th slot is some kind of push or uh, or
Some sort of
if you want
utility piece.
mighty swing, or it's your flavor spot.
There's
So
so many possibilities here, and I think they'd all be fine. And
yeah,
it's sort of like just figure out what works best.
yeah. There's the what's the brawler one that has you scatter forwards.
Oh yeah, reckless. No, barging forward. Both a
Yeah,
ping and a push. I've had some. I tried it with reavers and had some pretty poor success with it. So I'm a little off the card just because there were times where I was like, I only need like to push one or two, and smash is the most likely. So I'll just line up smash, roll no smash, and end up in this situation where I'm like, am I going to be pushing away from where I wanted to go? Like, uh, usually I could maneuver it. So I just ended up like kind of sideways moving or ending up similar positioning to where I was wanting to go. But oh boy, you got to be
yeah.
fond of the gamble there.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that's flavor as you choose on that 10th. I think we're going with countercharge for now.
Yep.
Upgrades.
Upgrades. I guess we'll start in faction and try not to read every single one again. I don't think there will be too much risk of that here, though. Most of their in-faction upgrades are not amazing.
Yeah.
But I think the one that is retaliate, and I think you pretty much
Yep.
have to bring this.
Yeah.
It's not as good as what is the Crush's one that's a reaction gambit.
Brutal reprisal,
Yeah,
probably.
you can't ambush anybody with this because it is an upgrade, so they'll know that it's there. But that's not a bad thing either.
Yeah.
But so it's basically the same. It's a reaction after you get hit to then punch back range 1 or 2. Um, they kind of changed the wording a little bit. So your fighter, it doesn't stop your fighter from being driven back, but the attack reaction happens before the drive back step, and you are not allowed to drive back the attacker. So
Yeah. This is a good catch on your part. I did not notice that the timing window meant that you didn't have to worry about getting driven back.
so yeah, I think that one's still pretty good. And if it's just an attack deterrent, that's also
Hmm.
very good.
Hmm.
Um, you do have to break this after you make the attack, so you still only get the one option. Like you don't get to just keep doing it over and over again, but um, it's still really good. Um,
Yeah.
it is limited to range 1 or 2, but that shouldn't matter. You don't have range 3 in the warband, and I think that you're not likely to have a lot of upgrades to give it. Um, I th- I'm pretty sure that's the only infaction that I'm taking most of the time.
Yeah, there's some situational stuff that prevents drivebacks or different things, but I don't think they're. I think you're going to find universals more universally helpful.
Yeah.
So
There's one I just want to mention because I think there's like some really weird play with it, but I, I think on the whole it probably isn't actually all that good. It's called Final Frenzy. You play it on a fighter, and that fighter cannot be taken out of action. The effect does not prevent damage being dealt. At the end of the action phase, you break the card, and when the card is broken, the fighter is taken out of action. So
mm,
you are using this probably only when a fighter looks like they're already going to be dead, or if if it's your only fighter left and you're just like, well, I need to do a lot of work here in round 3 with Drom's Reach 2 axe, and I can't afford
mhm,
for him to die. So here we go. We get a whole round of Drom no matter what.
yeah,
Um, this is a very different strategy to what we're trying to do, and probably what you'd really ever want to be doing with these guys. But could be interesting. There's some weird play there. So something
yeah,
for all you mad scientists out there.
sure. Um, I'm gonna say maybe we also think about crazed rampager, +2
Yeah,
move while it's making a charge action.
it is
I
worth
think maybe having
considering.
I think maybe having one. I'm gonna write it down. Actually, I'm
Okay.
gonna go just having one upgrade speed in there is probably worth doing.
Yep. Yep. I think it's probably worth it. And the +2 is pretty big. So
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
But otherwise, universals.
Yeah, so some universals. We've got some, you know, there's a number of different things that we could be looking for here. I think, given that you already have two large fighters, you probably just go ahead and just throw in uh, Great Fortitude, because there's really no downside to making large fighters bigger.
Before we put in great fortitude, you put in gifted bulk. It's the
Yes, I
yeah,
mean, maybe you just throw in both. You can get it,
sure,
the gifted bulk chaos one you can get for free, right? So
yeah, yeah,
of course, of course. Uh, I guess that's a fair question though. Do you just do both? Do you use two slots for wounds?
yeah, sure. Let's see if we run out of room for other stuff. Let's
Yeah,
start with that, and we'll come
sure.
back and cut.
All right.
Gifted bulk, great fortitude. Okay.
Um,
This is not. I mean, we're going to get some damage buffs in there in a second. But I think what was the other one that I was? Oh, I really think Phantom Darts might be a pick here.
I do too.
Um, I there's no restriction on what kind of attack action generates blood tithe.
Yep.
So if you can chip damage on your way in with those darts, then you can have blood tithe by the time you arrive.
Yeah. Um, and if you're in a situation where you're just content to sit in the middle, sometimes you just need a range 3 attack.
Yep.
Range 2 just might not cut it because your opponent's like, hey, I can stand here and be out of threat range, and you're like, well, here we go. You
Hmm.
start chucking these grievous range 3 attacks.
Hmm.
Not bad at all. um some other options, I guess, maybe just worth mentioning in illusions here. I also thought Phantom Spear might make sense because it does give you another innate range 2 attack. Not as essential. I don't know that we
Hmm.
put it down, but it's something to consider because reach is important.
Sure. Let's see. We're on 5 right now. We got Retaliate,
Yeah.
Crazed Rampager, Gifted Bulk, Great Fortitude, Phantom Darts. Obviously, we're going to have great strength in here.
Yep.
Gets
Definitely
us to 6.
great strength. We do have a spot for restricted. Do we put in Berserker Rage?
Whoa. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
Put it
Let's
on
try
the
it.
Gore Hulk, so he's
Yeah.
uninspired, 3 Fury, 4 damage.
Yeah.
I don't know that we care about his one block all that much anyway.
Okay. I like it. Try it.
Okay. Obviously, if we
Um,
find something else restricted, we could pull that.
yeah, that's a good call. Let's see. There is Reflecting Mask. This is a relatively new reaction after an activation step in which this fighter was dealt damage by an enemy fighter's range 1 or 2 attack action. Deal 2 damage to the enemy fighter, then break this card.
Yeah. Um. So you do have to survive the attack, but you get to put 2 damage back on them for hitting you. And with big fighters, that's probably coming up. I like it. Is it the best choice?
Mm,
I don't know. I would definitely put it in just to try it out, but I don't know if that's the correct choice.
mm,
In a similar vein, you have Blood Rack Mask. If an opposing fighter moves adjacent to this fighter, they take 1 damage. Um, you can trigger that with Enrage.
mm.
I guess you can also trigger Reflecting Mask. You make somebody with a bad attack charge you, and if they hit you, you get to put 2 damage on them.
Yeah.
Kind of like both of those, but um, I mean, you could always just be bringing things like Duelist Speed or Soundless Step or Glory Seeker,
Mm,
and also be getting those types of things, because they're just universally strong effects. So I don't know. Where are you leaning? Are you wanting more just like generically useful things, or do you want to lean more into their weird, like, hey, I want you to come and hit me sort of stuff?
uh, I think I tend to creep back towards generically useful. We have, yeah. Let's see. So we've got 2 damage buffs right now. One of them being Berserker Rage.
Yep.
We're at 7 upgrades, 2 are health. Um, I think you got one range 2 fighter, one situational range 2 fighter. Um, so I think duelist speed or soundless step are both reasonable picks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's go. It doesn't matter too much. Duelist speed technically give you a push after you retaliate. That's the only time it would be better than soundless step, I think, in this.
Yeah, I think you probably just go ahead and take soundless, right? Because if you
Yeah.
just need to move and then push one more to be in position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or go on guard. Those
Oh, sure.
late rounds, you can say, all right, I'm going to go on guard so I can step
Yeah,
one, and that'll get me
push.
one closer
Yeah,
to be able to do the
yeah.
thing.
Start doing the thing. Yeah.
Right.
So soundless step
Uh,
seems
yeah.
good.
Two more. Savage strength for as much longer as it's in is
Yeah, that's
totally
always very
available.
solid.
Uh, Especially since you only have one defense dice each.
I guess thinking about speed boosts as well, since you mentioned savage strength, do we switch out the universal savage speed for the in-faction crazed rampager? They both get plus
Oh,
two move,
I
but one
see.
is for anything and the other is only on charges.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
With the understanding that once it rotates, you
Yeah,
probably
you
just
just
go.
go back.
Or we can take the advice of Nick and make our speed boost be driven by envy instead.
Yeah, also good. I don't know how many times you'll be diving onto opposing leaders, but if it'll just come up every once in a while.
Hmm.
I, I think given our game plan right now, I'm less interested in Driven by Envy just because, well, because I think we mostly would want the speed early, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Driven by Envy doesn't help as much early with this warband.
Sure.
Playtesting may prove that to be wrong, but I think for right now, I would rather have plus two speed to get up to speed 5 on the speed 3 guys.
Sure. We have one more slot, and I think it should probably be an accuracy upgrade. We got
Yep.
some in gambits. There is reroll stuff. There's this weird lurking horror one.
Yeah, actually, I think Lurking Horrors is very good and not too weird at all.
Plus one dice says fighter's attack actions. After his fighter's attack roll, remove one attack dice from that roll. So it's roll an extra and then drop the lowest sort of
Yeah,
thing.
which usually you won't roll successes on all your dice. So
Yeah.
it's
And then,
basically.
yeah.
Oh, and it has another thing on it. That's right.
Yeah. Reaction after your activation step. If this fighter is in a cover hex, push this fighter 1 hex.
I don't know why
So I
you'd
think
want to do
it's
that, but
right. And it is optional. I know plenty of reasons why you'd want. Like, I mean, it's basically a very, very situational soundless step that you'd be able to have for this guy.
yes, that's true.
If you were to have the availability to put darkening stone, then it just means, and
Yeah,
it's not even after this fighter takes an
just
activation; it's
after.
after your activation step.
Oh
So,
man, actually, that is a crazy combination. Whoa. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's not going to happen for these guys, but there's something to keep in mind for other warbands.
yeah,
Yeah, actually, I really like that one, and I'm glad that you mentioned it because it is. I even put it in the notes. What am I? um, it is plus one dice at any range. I know you have to drop one of the dice, but most of the time there will be a not success that you can drop.
yeah,
Um, I think that is very good. I think it's gonna be terrifying on Mollog,
yeah,
but it's just good. Plus one dice is always good.
yeah.
Because the only other plus one dice option right now is the bite. What is it called?
Ferocious
Ferocious
bite.
bite, and that is
Yeah,
restricted to range 1. So
yeah.
we wouldn't run that here, I don't think.
No.
I guess there's sort of a sideways accuracy boost if you want to take weapons instead, but I don't know that
Hmm.
these guys need weapons.
I don't think so. I think they have enough going on here. You can just kind of work on their profiles that they
Yeah,
have.
yeah, I agree.
Uh, that gets us to a 32 card deck.
Yeah. I guess I will mention because it's new and it's coming in the universals for Gorechosen. If you were looking to both get access to a slight increase in accuracy and you wanted some reach, the Cursed Boarding Pike is probably a card you're going to see a lot going forward.
Yeah, that's a great point.
This is a attack action upgrade that is reach to 4 fury for 2 damage. Holy moly. But like all the other cursed weapons, the bounty gained is spent unless the fighter is on a feature token when they take the fighter out of action.
Yeah.
I almost don't care. If I need a range 2 attack, probably come in here because, wow, 4 fury.
Yeah.
It's very accurate. And as anyone who has been terrorized by crits knows, more dice is more opportunities at crits, and
Yeah.
it feels bad.
Cam is going to be happy for this. He's on our team.
Yeah,
He's got a lot of spears in his deck, and this is a cool spear.
I think we forgot to mention one of the new universal upgrades as well, and that
Oh,
is
lay it on me.
Dark Parasites.
Yep. Yep.
This is going to be, I think, replacing a lot of decks Savage Strength, and this is +1 damage to enemy fighters' range 1 attack actions that target this fighter, but you get.
That sounds terrible,
It sounds
Phil.
awful. I know, but bear with me. There's another clause. It doesn't just make your opponent's fighters better. You then get +1 damage and grievous to your fighter's range 1 and 2 attack actions.
Oof.
So a
Yeah.
potential +2 damage at the expense of making adjacent fighters get +1 damage against you.
Yeah.
There are definitely going to be situations where you do not care.
That actually goes pretty nice with Cursed Boarding Pike
It
as
sure
well, because that's
does.
rolling so many dice.
Now, of course, you'd probably either only put this on a small enough fighter where you don't care about +1 damage, where you're like, I would have died anyway. Or you put it on a big enough fighter that they're like, yeah, okay, you can deal 1 more damage to me, but I'll probably be able to live.
Or you put it on a fighter who's making their hay off of high defensive stats.
Yeah, if you got like 3 dodge or something, and you're just like, well, I'll take the gamble.
I'll take the chance that you might try to hit me.
Some weird combos there, but I think for this deck right now, we probably don't need it. But I think it could very easily be slotted in for one of our other damage boosts.
Sure. Yep. And that'll be available. It's interesting to be doing this because we have seen all the cards now, I think, for Nether Maze. So
yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say that like the new card packs coming out are bad or anything, because they're not, but like I think the power level between Harrow Deep and Nether Maze and Dire Chasm and Beastgrave is so different that it feels like there's not as many options as there used to be. Maybe that's just my perception, but
yeah, it's tough, and now we're not getting a bunch of hunger cards printed, which is nice. So like the universals are coming out.
You can actually use all of them.
Yeah. But yeah, I think rotation, as it always is, will be an interesting time. But we don't know how far off that is.
No, we don't. So
we might have a few months hanging out with this, which I hope to do. So
I would think sometime before the end of the year, but like it could be December. We could have this for the next 3 months, and this would be the meta that we're in, and I'd be pretty happy with that. There's a lot to experiment with still.
Sure. We are experimenting with one of our longest episodes of all time right now.
It's stretching on. I think it doesn't help that we didn't have a solid deck in mind before we started talking about it. But
yep, you got the full organic. I'm going to run it down real quick here with what we ended up taking, if that sounds cool, and then we'll
let's do it.
All right. So for surges, we've got Savage, Slaughter, Untouchable Fury, Surge of Aggression, Contest of Equals, Sudden Revelation, and Horrors in the Dark. Our end phases are Worshipped in Battle, Glorious Battle, A Worthy Offering, Unafraid, Wasteland, and Chum the Waters. Our gambits are Call of Blood, Depth Charging, We Must Go Deeper, Center of Attention, Corrupted Companion, King of the Deeps, Blind Gamble, Skin of Brass. I think we went Domain of Wrath, and
Yep.
Countercharge. And then the upgrades were Retaliate, Savage Speed, Gifted Bulk, Great Fortitude, Phantom Darts, Great Strength, Berserker Rage, Soundless Step, Savage Strength, and Lurking Horror.
Yeah. Sounds pretty solid to me. I mean, we'll obviously have to see. 3 fighter warbands always make me a little anxious, but I think with these guys being big enough, it'll be a little bit like Crushes, where you don't have to worry too much. You're not getting one shot in round one. That is pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah.
Um, I look
I'm
forward to
really
playing.
looking forward to seeing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jinx. Should be good. We like Davey said, this has been long, so I think we're pretty well good to wrap up here. Unless you got any final thoughts.
No, I think we can take it to the house here.
All right. As always, if you want to get in touch with us, and if you've got any thoughts about cards that we missed, or if you're like, man, why this seems like a crazy choice on your part, let us know at WTHcast on Twitter or whatthehexcast@gmail.com. We always appreciate all the feedback. You can also always find us in the Discords. We're hanging out there. If you want to check out any of the other content for themortalrealms.com, including the blogs, you can, if you didn't see the blogs from the last release, you can go check those out. They're up now. And hopefully the new blog post will be up at the same time as this episode.
Yep.
Coming up next, we will be doing a bat rep. We're going to play this deck with the new warband into something.
Yeah. If yet to be determined, if you hear this episode, we're probably playing the game pretty soon after you hear this.
Yeah.
But if you want to lodge a vote for something you want to see him against, and this is pretty close to release date, drop us a line. You could influence what we play. Do you have any thoughts, Phil? Any?
I mean, it could be interesting to just grab one of the warbands out of Nethermaze, just because it's like, hey, they're all in the same season. You could even say, hey, the 2 most recent releases, let's pair them up, because, well, they don't do the paired releases anymore. It used to be kind of a fun way to be like, hey, here's 2 warbands, just throw them together. Let's see what happens.
I had that same thought. It's because Hexbane does so many little attacks. That's an environment that you might have some inspired Gorechosen.
You might. I think you might have some really sad Hexbanes in this matchup too. Although, I don't know.
Same deal. Hexbane's giving hard decisions.
Yeah,
let's see.
It'll be interesting. Maybe we'll just do that one. I don't know if you're interested in playing them, but
I think they're cool.
Okay. I guess as an aside, we could also put a listener question thing in the Discord and see if anybody gives us any
let's do that.
Did you prep a Flava text for today?
And these are challenging because you only just gotten introduced to these cards. But this is a quote attributed to Skull Grinder Herrex, and you may not figure out the name of the card. You may know what the card does, but here's what Skull Grinder Herrex has to say: pathetic.
I think this is one of their upgrades that lets you choose like a mode when you make the attack by removing a blood tithe. I absolutely have no idea what it's called.
This is actually an objective.
Oh, okay.
He's disdaining Black Powder's efforts.
Oh, okay. I was way off. I do know what the card is then after that hint. That is the that survived the attack one. I don't know what's it called.
Untouchable Fury.
Untouchable Fury. I love that it's Black Powder. One of the biggest attacks in the game. Pathetic.
Yeah. Skull Grinder is just like, he looks like he's like, yeah, party time, like ready for the club or whatever, and he's just getting
impaled on a cutlass.
Yeah, I don't think that's how you use a cutlass, but I don't know.
It's certainly probably not the most effective way, but he's big enough. He can make it. He can make it work.
Sure. All right.
Sweet. All right. You got a recommended listening for folks.
I do. I was telling you before we started, we're almost running out of like Blood and Skulls songs that I already know. So I if we have much more in the way of Corn, I'm just gonna have to like, I don't know, listen to a metal album and then
Yeah, I
maybe
was gonna say like one Slayer album. There you go. You got the rest set forever.
this is a Frightened Rabbit one. It's called Backyard Skulls. So
Solid.
there you have it.
For what the hex? I've been Phil.
And I've been Davy. And I have been recording for 2 hours and 19 minutes when I say now.
Use this during a successful attack action that targets the fighter after the out of action check, which happens right before drive back, I believe, because you don't drive back a fighter that's out of action. Right? Nah, I need to check.
I'm looking at it right here. No, I'm not. Again. How was Mean Girls?
It was pretty good. I mean, obviously, it's it's just the same as the movie, basically, but rewritten for the stage.
Okay.
Um,
Never saw the movie, so I don't know.
okay, fair. Comedy. Do you know the general idea of what it is?
I think there's some girls who are mean in it.